Welcome everybody to Sangam Talks, and I'm very honored to again welcome Shri Abhash Maldiyar, who has been one of our earliest speakers on Sangam Talks. He's one of the rare architects of India, or you may call him an urban designer with a passion for history and a knack for storytelling that keeps you hooked. If you go through his incredible architectural creations aren't just buildings, they are gateways to future tales. From Marxist to post Marxist, an ex communist, as he calls himself, Abhas's literary journey is as diverse as it gets. So we delve into his conundrum, Babur, the chessboard king. And this is going to be my first question to you, Abhasji, in a while. Uh, who was, as Abhas clarifies, was the founder of the Timurid rule, often and we often mistakenly call it the Mughal rule. This book of his, Babur the Chessboard King, is based on real historical accounts, and Abhas is fluent in deciphering the Persian manuscript itself. He brings a fresh perspective to old stories, but that doesn't stop here. He's also a key player at the Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research, FIHCR, where they are all about digging into the true origins of the Indian history. So we are ready to uncover a past in an entirely new way, and I would call it an Abhasian way. Abhasji, I would ask you to take over the talk.
Namaste, everyone, and my wishes for Holi to everybody. And here we are to discuss about my new book, Babur the Chessboard King. And I would just delve into it right from talking about the title itself. Title of a book and cover of a book is something which is actually the gateway to the book. Or rather, if I say it as an architect or a designer who believes in iconography, who believes in producing something aesthetically pleasing, who believes in that image of something or icon of something is what really attracts you to there. So it was certainly a very important thing that we place a right cover and we place the right title of the book. So, of course, cover is done by a magnificent uh, Neeraj from the Penguin India. But as far as the title is concerned, we had a lot of brainstorming about it, that what exactly should be the title of the book. Because, of course, it needed to be something which is a hook which can attract the people. But at the same time, it had to be something which would exactly be adjective of Babur. So the title, the Chessboard King, is not given by me. It was given to him by a Muslim historian of 17th century named as Farishta. So Farishta was a great Muslim historian who was quite critical of a lot of the Muslim rulers, and he tried to narrate the tale as it was. And he called Babur as the chessboard king for multiple reasons. One reason being that, and before I get into the reason for it, yes, a lot of people thought that the chessboard king is somehow eulogizing quotient for Babur. It is to make a hero out of him. Then I'm sorry, it's not the truth. Because if people play chess, they would know that what the power a king holds. Everyone, if you imagine from perspective of those guys sitting on a chessboard, they will like to be all but the king, because king can go just one house, here, there, left, right, 45 degrees this side, 45 degrees this side, rear, and so on and on. That's what a chessboard king can do. And such was the life of Babur too. From the time he lost his father when he was just 11, right? And his quest to gain a kingdom ever remained till when he finally gained Kabul after almost a decade. Till then, his quest has been like this, that he would go to Samarkand to capture it. It is captured, and while he is beginning to rule there, he would know that Andijan, his capital city, is under threat. And while he makes a way back to Andijan, that's when Andijan is lost and also Samarkand is lost. And so his game of back and forth, moving a bit to Khurasan, etc., keeps on happening. And there's a very interesting character in whole Babur's journey. That character's name is Shaibani Khan. Shaibani Khan is an eternal enemy of Babur till the time till the time he finally dies in 1509 AD. And it so happens that when Babur comes to Samarkand, that's when Shaibani comes. Shaibani comes to Samarkand to chase Babur, and Babur moves to Andijan. And that's where the Shaibani follows, and Babur further moves from there. So wherever Babur goes, the Shaibani follows, and the game of Tom and Jerry goes on and on. So Babur keeps on saving himself, and but he chooses not to pick a fight with this formidable enemy. And because he was always a kingdom-less king, and till very long time, and he could never acquire a very substantial amount of territories. That's the reason why Farishta addressed him as chessboard king, and it actually dismisses the so far known notion that he was a infallible conqueror. He was a conqueror who could just go anywhere and conquer anything. But that is too far from the truth. Truth is that he was more like, it won't be very appropriate to call him a loser king, but certainly he was not infallible conqueror too. He was somewhere in between. So that's where the title comes from. And then the second question, which would be coming to mind of a lot of people, and that is something which I do feel that I should religiously answer, that why this book called Babur the Chessboard King. So this is a book which is not gonna be just one volume and I'm gonna be done. So Baba 2 is gonna come soon, maybe early next year, where it would be sequel of this work. And while this work is more about the foundational years of Babur, the sequel would be talking more about his presence in Hindustan. This book starts with a story where he loses his father, that is in 1594 CE, till the time he makes his second failed attempt to enter into Hindustan. He made actually five attempts to enter into Hindustan, and the fifth one was the one which became the successful, and the previous four were all the failures. Now, it was very important for me to get into the life of Babur because uh, a Babur was always in my memory. It was always embedded there. And second, I could never see this empire, which is actually Timurid, not Mughal. I will further tell you that why it's Timurid or not Mughal. But before I tell you this, I must tell you that why this book. So it was important for me to know about the Timurids because I could never digest them as somebody who are the people who made Bharat richer. I could never digest the fact that they were some sort of the angels of a religion called secularism. That was absolutely indigestible to me because I knew for sure from the partial reading of the text that whether it's Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar or it's Jahangir or it's Shah Jahan or it's any either of them, they were not the good guys for Bharat for sure. They did all the horrific things, what you would expect an enemy to do for you. They did all it. And so it was very important for me to really understand that what is their true story, what they are, who they are, why they did the way they did, and what exactly they did it. Do we exactly know the whole amount of the things what they were done by them, or they were the things which were brushed on the carpet, right? So, and I also had the notion, and I still have this notion with me that if you want to deal with an enemy, you need to know about them inside out. As important it is to know about yourself, which we call as Swayam Bodh, it's equally important to know about the enemies, what we call as the Shatru Bodh, or the having to know the enemy. And so it was a prime target for me. And and it the journey, while this was always the quest that somewhere I have to discover it, but that's when you always need an ignitron to start a machine, or you always need an ignition of to light a big fire. So it was around 5 years back when a meme had come across on India Today, and a lot of big celebrities had also got involved to make these people as some sort of angels who made India way richer than it was, right? So India Today has circulated a meme which talk about this Mughal era or the Timurid era giving us a GDP share of around 25%. So, and everyone was boasting around, including the great lyricist Javed Akhtar and many people that, in that era. And it is also related, it actually is related to something what perhaps, yeah, Tejasvi Surya had said something that, Akbar is not desirable in India, and so on and on. So that's where how this debate had picked up. So, and so the India Today meme had given the number 25%, and their source was Angus Madison. So I thought that, that's fine, that maybe that, yes, okay, our GDP share was 25%, but what's harm in looking at this primary source or the source which they are referring to? So when I opened the source of Angus Madison, the book what he has written is called The Contour of World Economy 180 to 2030 AD, where there's projection about the economy and there's analysis about the economic data of the past. So what came into my eyes were quite surprising, because till now the notion was that notion given by the people, the Marxists and the celebrities of that period, that India was made richer by these guys. In around 1500 AD, when Babur barges into Hindustan, that's when our GDP share was around 24.8%, almost 25%. India today was not wrong at it. But 1000 C, what was our GDP share? GDP share was around 28%. Now go back further 1000 years, and 180, what was our GDP share? It was 32%. So we were one third when the fall of the Mauryans had happened, and just a few years, a couple of centuries just after that, right? So we were still one third of the world economy. And so it gave a I was like that, how can it be? Because I knew the of course I had a belief that maybe that they would have done something for India in terms of wealth accumulation and something, but I was quite convinced that they were absolute jihadis who killed people in the name of religion. But I was not knowing this economic angle at all. But what came next was even more surprising. The next thing was the GDP of a country is about, say, the total wealth a government has or the state has, while the GDP per capita is the total sum of the wealth what uh, what people are having on an average. So say they are, if 100 is the GDP of a country, so that's okay, it's with the country. And if you say that 2 is the GDP per capita, it means that each and every individual is having 2 units of the money, right? So between 1500 to 1820, our GDP capita growth rate, I'm talking about growth rate, that how we were growing, right? If the Mughal state is growing or the Timurid state is growing, so people should also grow if we are still being kept prosperous by these guys, right? But this was not the case. From 1500 to 1820 CE, our GDP per capita growth rate was negative, and it was the only period in whole economic projection done by Angus Madison that it was negative. Yes, it happened once more. It was during the British era, but it was just for um, it was just for 1913 to 1950. So even though the British ruled us for longer period, the GDP capita growth didn't go negative for longer period, right? It doesn't discounts British for every wrongs that they did, but it certainly gives you a picture that the Timurid rule was certainly not great to us. So please excuse me just for a minute. I'll just plug in my laptop and I resume again. Just a moment.
So while Abhas ji is replugging his computer, I'd request the audience or the viewers, you can keep posting your questions wherever you're joining from, YouTube or Sangam platform. And then at the end of this talk, we can take up those questions. I'm sorry for this glitch. It happens when you go live.
I'm really sorry. I'm back, and it was
Welcome
just
back.
I was not aware that my laptop is gonna.
Mhm.
I'm really
That's
sorry.
that's perfectly fine. Yeah, yeah. You can resume. You were talking about the GDP.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So GDP per capita is something which tells you that how wealthy the people are, and this was something which I further triangulated with the other sources, like that. What is the condition of people? What is the lifestyle they are leading? So there are a lot of foreign travelers account which really showed that the rich are becoming richer, as in the elites, say the Timurid family or the people in the Timurid courts are becoming wealthier, while the people are going poor because they are forced to do forced production. The British to having made people to produce the indigo and other many things which was not desirable. But Mughals were no less. They were doing the similar things. They did a lot of such things. So when these data came to me, and I could work around the economic angle of what exactly had happened during the Timurid era, that's when I had presented a talk at Sangam Talk itself, which is around, say, 4 years, 4.5 years back or something. And that's when, looking at it, it was TV Mohandas Pai who said that, Abbas, you have already have enough research in terms of the economic angle. You were also aware a bit about the jihadi nature of these people in tits and pieces. So why don't you bring it all, go to the original sources, and write a series of books on each and every emperors, maybe a full-fledged biography, right? So that's I was quite convinced by what he said, and the people like Vikram Sampath and there are many others, Amish Tripathi, etc., would always tell me that you should not spend time on the Twitter threads. You should not spend time on engaging on the Twitter brawls, but you should pick it to make it big because the tweets will fade away someday. But books are the thing which are gonna exist there forever. So it suddenly started making a lot of sense to me, and I began to work on the series. And of course, it had to be with Babur because he's the guy who founded the empire. But as any other the amateur historiography doing person, I also went to the translated text. And when you say that the I'm using the primary source, we make a very strong claims that, hey, I have used the primary source. But the what we have actually not used the primary source, because what we're using a translated version of it. And trust me, when I picked the translated version, which one was by Annette Bebre Sujan, whose translation of Baburnama is the most reputed one, and the other one was of Thackson, which was done in an earlier phase, and there are many other one done by Dilip Horo recently. So when I brought on all these translations of Baburnama together, I could see the contradictions. Like if I give you an example, while Annette Bebre Sujan is talking about Babur taking the title of Ghazi and he's addressing the Hindus. So he has addressed Hindus actually in the Persian text as the Kafis, but in translation you read it as pagans, and in bracket it's written infidels. So they have, so to some extent, distorted the whole narrative itself, because once you do these small tweakings, the whole idea what is being expressed there gets changed. Because in this theological lingua, it really matters that what word exactly has been used. So that's where I got certain amount of inspiration looking at this distortion and discrepancies, that perhaps it would be a right to go back to the original source. Because somewhere, of course, Jaduna Sarkar's words always echoed in my mind what he has said in 1953 to his pupils and to his pupils of pupils while he was retiring, that this is a golden era for Indian historiography, because we can go back to the original sources of the authorities and read them. And he meant that the languages, you can learn the languages, and the manuscripts of those languages are available. We have enough of manuscripts. So I felt that why not pick the language itself, and I did spend a year and a half to pick on how to read the Persian manuscript of that era, and then I accessed the original manuscript which we have in our archives in National Museum. It's an illustrated manuscript. It's in Persian, actual Baburnama was actually written in Chagatai Turkic, whose manuscripts we don't have. But this manuscript which we hold is the one which was translated into Persian under the authority of Akbar, Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, in 1589. 1589, this project was over. So, of course, that is also can be considered as a primary source because that's the only thing what we have as of now. And so I did refer to it, and then I began to make a notes out of it. So I built my own set of translated notes. I referred to the translations which I couldn't. Like it was very in sparse cases where, especially, I'm trying to quote Babur exactly in terms of the Persian proses, in terms of the poems what he writes. So there, I have taken liberty to directly quote the other translations because the intention cannot be questioned because it's just mere poetry, and at times I failed to translate it. So I did use them directly. Otherwise, more or less, the work were translated, and then I built my own narrative that how the life of Babur was. And while doing so, I took enough care to deal with the context of the places. As in, when Babur is trying to enter into Hindustan, he is passing Afghanistan and he has come across a lot of tribes, like the Pashi tribe is there, which, and then he comes across the Hajras, he comes across the Junbil tribe, he comes across many such tribes. So, what I have done in the book is that I have brought the history of their Hindu past as well, so that you can get the context that the place where Babur is traveling right now, or the place where Babur is traversing right now, did had a Hindu past, and you will be able to believe that till 10th to 11th century, the Afghanis were actually resisting the Islamic invasion to a very large extent. And so it became kind of a not only the Babur's narrative put into the book, but it was a bit more than that. Babur's narrative, at the same time, bringing in the context and the cultural past of the places which Babur is going through. And of course, when I began to research around it, I there was a lot of back and forth. And while doing all this back and forth, I did also come across a lot of things about other emperors too. So one of the most startling thing was about the Taj Mahal. And of course, that will be dealt in detail when I do the biography of Shah Jahan. But still, I mentioned about it in the introduction of the chapter because the story of the Taj was again an anchor point which further propelled me to not leave the project just at Babur but keep on doing it further and further because there's so many things which is hidden from us. So just to give a bit of perspective and set you that what it would mean that I'm gonna say in the next couple of minutes or so. So we know about the Bengal famine of 1943, in which around 3.5 to 4 million people had died, and we say that this famine was created by the man named Winston Churchill. So, and of course, Marxists also blame Winston Churchill for it. But now let's go back to the Shah Jahan's period. So when Shah Jahan is has commissioned this structure called the Taj, and I'm using the word commissioned because many people have a belief that this was already a structure upon which some work was done, or it was converted into a mausoleum, or many historians also believe that this was a very fresh project. There was no structure which was existing. So I am neither on that side nor I am on this side until unless I have gone through the sources at myself, and which I will talk about in the book of Shah Jahan. But irrespective of that, a structure was certainly commissioned, and this structure was commissioned for a cost of 4.18 crore, or say 41.8 million silver rupiah. Silver rupiah means silver coins. And this happening in 1631-32. And that's the period when Surat, Malwa, and the Deccan is suffering from one of the worst famine. And in that famine, around 7.4 to 7.4 million people have died, right? In the Bengal famine of 1943, around 4 million people died. In the Surat, Deccan, Malwa famine of 1940, 1630-31, around 7.4 million people died. So the number of people dying was almost twice, and population was certainly less. And why this famine and Taj is related? Because these two events are happening at the same time when 7.4 million people are dying, right? And it's just that in that period when this guy Shah Jahan is spending around 41.8 million silver rupees to commission a mausoleum. And this famine, interestingly, was actually created by this man Shah Jahan himself, which is asserted by his own biographer Lahori. Lahori explains that the people, the governors of these regions, the Deccan, Malwa, Surat, etc., had revolted against Shah Jahan, and or rather the Timurid rule. And by revolting, they had become the ally of Adil Shahis. Adil Shahis are the enemies of the Timurid Empire in that period. And so Shah Jahan thinks to teach a lesson to the rebels, and for this he says that these lands are very fertile, and if this fertile land can't remain with me, they can't remain with these people too. Because the more the fertile the land, they had the mathematics that it gives more revenue. So the Malwa, which was one of the most fertile belt, gave them a revenue of around 53%. And so that's when he sends out his army, and that army destroys all the crops, ravishes all the crops. And when the horses go over that earth, the clay, right, the earth which is used to produce, so it becomes unfit to grow something for at least a couple of years. And that's when the rain don't happen. And it's exactly like how famine was induced by Churchill in 1943. We have something similar happening around 290 years back, done by a guy named Shah Jahan, who happens to be a favorite boy of the Marxist, but somehow Churchill doesn't falls to be in a good eyes, and rightfully so in the eyes of the Marxist. So it's a lot of hypocrisy on that part. But the same people who call Shah Jahan to be a person who created one of the best icon for the symbol of love, etc., etc. So they are the same people who hurl the abuses on Sri Ram, who can't see the relationship between Sri Ram and Mata Sita Mata in a great of a light, though we have evidences which are way beautiful than what we see it here. And the story which I told you right now, which actually is not a story, but it's an anecdote, it's a fact which had happened. It tells you that Shah Jahan was a genocide maker, and the Taj certainly is to remind us of all but the love. It reminds us of a genocide which was inflicted upon the people. And so now, when the likes of the Oasis come and say that हम ये लेके चले जाएंगे तो क्या बचेगा आपके पास, हमने तो आपको architecture सिखाया, etc., etc., and he somehow tries to link himself to the Mughal Sultanate, and that's where he says these all. But you know, the Taj was built by the blood of the Indians, right? Because 7.4 million Indians died in a famine created when this guy commissioned the project. The artisans were Indians, right? And the money which was put across was the extorted money from these people who are dying in the famine. And the tale of the famine is so devastating. The eyewitness accounts tell us that, like, say for example, Peter Bundy, he was a traveler there. He says that the people are eating from the excreta of the dead. People are trading a goat meat for dog meat. People are selling off their kids to somebody as a slave so that he can at least leave. And there are even more ugly tales, like the places are filled with the dead bodies, the corpses, etc. So, and in fact, the account of the famine is very well elaborated, in fact, by the biographer of Shah Jahan, Lahori too. So, if you can see Churchill as a genocide maker, so where does this guy stand? Where does this guy Shah Jahan stand? He's a genocide maker too, isn't it? So I was getting these a lot of fresh perspectives, and somehow I was getting compelled to look into the life of all these emperors with as much objectivity. And I say it as objective exercise because I'm certainly not looking to make pamphlet for any of the political ideologies, which is right wing or left wing. And I don't believe in this notion of right wing and left wing too, because somehow in India it can't exist. Just for a political point of view, we do it. So, but irrespective of that, this work of biography is gonna be something which would be for the history wing people who really wants to look at history. But While we are looking at these histories, the history of the people like Timurids is as such that it will never be able to make them hero out of them once you have put it out objectively. Now, we all are told that these empire, this empire was called as the Mughal Empire, right? In a say in a UPSC examination or anywhere for that matter, the question comes that, of course, it will be very simplistic of a question for UPSC, but just I took the name of examination because it's related to the humanities. That a question comes that who founded the Mughal Empire, and if you don't write Babur as an answer, you are gonna get 0 marks or maybe even negative if you choose somebody else. But you won't have an option to choose somebody else because we never had an empire called Mughal Empire. There was no Mughal Empire at all. So the empire which was founded by the man named Babur, it was called Timuria Gurkhania, or say Timurid Gurkhania in an anglicized version. And he hated the Mughals. Mughals are different people in his eyes, in his opinion. So he says in Baburnama that wherever Mughals go, there are devastations, there unrest. So he is not seeing Mughals as of Mughals with a great of the opinions. And in his eyes, Mughal are the people who bring the unrest, who drench away the peace in the places where they come to. So, and we say that these guys, Babur founded the Mughal Empire and he is hurling the abuses to the Mughals. Now, but who are the Mughals and who are the Timurids? It is a very pertinent question. And so we all know that Babur's ancestry comes from both the side. One side is the Timur side, and the other side is the Genghis Khan side. So his maternal lineage is falling in the line of Genghis Khan, and his paternal lineage is falling in the lineage of Timur. Now, Timur and Genghis Khan, both of them happen to be a common ancestor, and the common ancestor is Tumane Khan. Tumane Khan sits on the top. In the fifth generation, we get Genghis Khan, and in the 10th generation, we get Timur. But here comes a difference. While Timur is a religious or a Islamist fanatic Persianized person who is not Mongol by culture, in contrast, Mongol culture is all about being very secular, where you don't involve religion into the state. They are very clear about it. Of course, there was no notion as such called secularism, but in terms of the name didn't exist, but the practice was very secular. And when Genghis Khan killed people, he was a secular killer because he didn't ask the religion of the people that which you belong to, and he would just slaughter them if he found them to be his enemies. It didn't matter whether they are Muslims or Christian or whatsoever, and he was a secular killer that way. And but we are also told, and we know rather, that Genghis Khan was also one of the biggest persecutor of the Muslim world because, of course, he had a lot of enemies in the Muslim side and he slaughtered them. But interestingly, there was a certain group of Muslims who also gave him a title of defender of religion because he saved certain bunch of Muslim people too. So it further gives you an evidence that he was a person who didn't kill in the name of religion. But at the same time, in his rule, that is the Mongol rule or the rule of the Mongols in the Mughalistan, Sharia couldn't be applied by the Muslims, and neither they could do the halal slaughter. So the meat which they are supposed to cut, it has to be cut in non-halal method, and Sharia cannot be applied. So if you are following Islam, you are free to pray the way you do, but you can't bring the laws and the regulations based on the Sharia. You have to follow the culture of the Mongol. So, had there been, say, Genghis Khan being the ruler of Bharat, say, in the time of now, so according to him, if you are to be a Bharatiya subject, you have to follow the culture and the tradition which is Bharatiya, which people may not like it, but it happens to be Hindu, and that is so that would form the dictate of the laws as well, as per the Genghis Khan ka policies. Now, in the contrast, Timur was a very fanatical Muslim whose set purpose or the worldview was that he has to Islamize whole of the world. And his biographer Yazdi says that he has to do it because the Prophet Muhammad has instructed it to be done. So Timur sees that as a primary focus. Now, the next question which often arises in the mind of the people that if Genghis Khan was the persecutor of the Muslims. So wasn't he Muslim because he's having a Khan surname, right? But the Khan surname again has nothing to do with the Muslims. It has nothing to do with the religion, but it's a regional surname, right? So the Khan literally meant that a person who is the leader of the Mongols is gonna take the title of the Khan, like the Kublai Khan, or say the Helegu Khan, etc., etc. So these are the leaders of the Mongols. It has nothing to do with the religion. And so when the people today use a surname like the Khan, etc., they have taken a surname of a region that is Mongolia. It is not a Muslim surname. They have not taken this surname because they converted to Islam, because it has nothing to do with the Islam. And like again relating it back to the Mongol rule, it was an absolute no that you are gonna bring in the Sharia culture. So it means that you are not gonna apply the Arabian culture or a foreign culture or tradition into the territory, into the land where you live, or which is a Mongol territory. Rather, you are gonna follow it. So, as per the Changesian rule, even if you are a Muslim in India per se, that you are supposed to take the surnames which belongs to these regions, right? You can't just pick a surname like Khan, which is out of the region, etc., etc. Now, while this was the case, the conversion of the Mongols happened in the period of the grandson of Genghis Khan. There was a guy named Barke Khan who was the son of Genghis Khan's elder son, Jochi Khan, and he was the first convert to Islam, and he was converted by a Sufi Muslim. And when he got converted, he returns back to his home, that is Mongolia, and that's when he comes across. When he comes to Mongolistan, he gets to know that Haligu Khan is slaughtering the Islamic world like anything, and Islamic world is almost over. It's gonna be the end of Islam. Like many people often have a belief that the Islamic civilizations or the Islamic culture or the Islamic realm never got defeated. But this was one reconquista that the Islam was facing a very stark defeat, and Haligu Khan had almost destroyed it entirely. Baghdad was entirely sacked. He was moving towards Egypt, and it was sure that they are also going to be defeated. The Khalifa of the Baghdad is gone. So that's what peeved Barke Khan. And he says to his elder brother, who happens to be the leader of all, that we need to stop Helegu Khan because he is destroying the deen of the most important deen, or rather, one has to say the deen which really is the religion of the God, as in it is what we are all supposed to follow. So he tries to persuade his brother to make Helgu Khan stop, but he doesn't do so. So he finally goes on a war against the Helgu Khan, and Helgu Khan gets defeated in that war. And after the defeat, he falls sick and all, and he finally dies. And had Harigu Khan not got defeated in that battle, neither the Mongol clan would have entirely got converted into the Islam. And in fact, the whole geopolitics would have been different because Islamic reign would have stopped back then. You would have not seen Ottoman Empire. And imagine that had you not seen the Ottoman Empire, perhaps the things wouldn't happen to the Jews as it happened. Or, in fact, what happened in Malabar, it wouldn't have happened. So that battle was strategically very important geopolitical battle which happened between Heligu Khan and the Barke Khan. So now, but I told this story just to make a case that how Mughals or the Mongols are strongly very different people, and the lineage is coming from Heligu Khan and etc etc. But on the contrast, Timur, who is sitting in the fifth generation, his lineage is very Persianized, is fanatically Muslim, which of course Mongol has also have happened in the days to come. But Timur is following a very Persian dictates. That's how it works. And Timur has two aspirations. Timur wants to become the Khalifa, and also he wants to become the Khan. He can't become the Khan because it doesn't come from the lineage of the Genghis Khan, and he can't become a Khalifa because again he doesn't come from a particular family which has the eligibility to become a Khalifa. So he propagates a story, a mythological story, that he has been blessed by the Allah, and he is supposed to be like a prophet or something. And the story what he propagates is accepted by the people. And it did happen in that era, the medieval era, that if a king or the leader propagates a tale, it is often accepted by the people as a word of the god. And it does happen, and he marries into the house of Genghis Khan to take some kind of power. And after marrying in the house of Genghis Khan, he takes the title, and that title is called Gurkhania, which means son-in-law in the Mongol language. And the empire which he established as a Amir of Timurid Gurkhania. So further continuing, Babur did nothing but just expanded the empire, or rather reinstated the empire which was created by Timur long back. And that's where the empire comes into the picture. And there was no such empire called the Mughal Empire at all, anywhere. So again, this was also, this is something which again was a reality check. But how did the guys got the name Mughal then? So how did we come to know it? So in the European eyes, the people were recognized by the races. So while they were chronicling the tale of the Babur and his predecessors and successors, so it was all being captured with the name the Mughals, because for them they were Mongols, because the race was Mongol, and racism was very high in the European world back then. And this how they them and the Mongols, and they couldn't differentiate between what is the culture and the race. For them, culture equal to the race, and that's how most of the narrative went through. So, and when we wrote our own books around these people, we just replicated the names given by the colonial masters, and we didn't even care to go back to primary sources, that what do they call themselves exactly as. And also I see that there was also a conspiracy that Mongols in general were seen as a very secular people. As I told you already, that Genghis Khan was a very secular person, and Mongols in general were like that, right? But and there's a man named Dr. Locke. Dr. Locke is the guru of the Voltaire, who is hailed by all the liberals. He is considered to be the father of liberalism per se. And so Genghis Khan and Dr. Locke was often compared by the philosophers of that period. And the European world in 18th century saw Genghis Khan as a perfect role model, because he was secular, he was expansionist, and somehow the Mughal and Mongol always looked like as a very sophisticated word. So that's why you even saw in the days to come that we got the terms like the technology Mughal and etc. So when you are expert or something, you are technology Mughal and so on. So when you are at a very elite position, you get that the title itself. So there was some malicious intent too, though I cannot make this claim because it's not written outrightly that way. But it's certain, the design certainly hints us that it was something on that line. So while these are narrative float to me, I thought that these all needs to be brought into one piece, and the series of books can be compiled. And of course, uh, when I read about Babur specifically going into the Baburnama, all this image of him being a person who was the patron of art, culture, and tradition, that also faded away drastically, because he, in fact, in this book, although this book is a foundational, is about the foundational years of Babur, here I have taken care to explain that how he was inspired by the vision of Timur, which was to Islamize the whole of the world and establish a rule in Bharat too. And I've also explained that how he saw himself exactly in the league of Ghazni and Gori. So he says in Baburnama that I am the third king after Ghazni and Gori to enter into Hindustan and rule, and I'm going to follow their principles. And of course, we all know that what were the principles of Ghazni and Gori? They were the Butt Shikans, or the idol breakers. And as I always say that often use this term rather, that the history of Hindustan or Bharat is always, or rather, the history of whole of the world is about the battle or the struggle between the idol breakers and the idol makers. So Babur certainly was in the league of one of the idol breakers, and we as the idol makers were up against him. Our ancestors did fight fierce battle. Rana Sanga had a very strong battle with him, and there are instances which are told that before Battle of Khanwa, there was one more Battle of Banaya, where the soldiers were so scared that they refused to go into the next battle, that is Battle of Khanwa, and they were still getting in the dreams that those Rajput soldiers are coming and slaughtering them. So I won't give much away about the book in this the first session of the discussion. I will just keep it more on the line that why this book happened and just a basic premise around it. And now I will leave it to the question and answers.
Thank you so much, Abhas ji. I do have a list of questions from the audience, but I would like to start with my own. So, at the beginning of your talk, you were talking about the GDP, how various historians have said, and mostly Western names that you have quoted. Now, in the present times, it has been revealed that a lot of these Western facts and figures or the data that they have is very anti-Indian in nature. In it with an intention to malign India or portray it in a negative light. So these GDP figures that they quote, how reliable are they? Are their sources?
So, it's what you are pointing is absolutely correct, because when it comes to the data information, somehow West is always trying to place India in a very sorry state. We see it even now, whether it's about the rankings or about any other data for that matter. It has always been the case. But what I found very interesting that this gentleman Angus Madison was quite honest about this historiography of the economic data, because it's from him where I got this information about our GDP capita being growth being negative in that period. And of course, his method is something which we cannot certainly rely upon the actual economic analysis, because he has used some method which cannot be used to calculate GDP. And of course, it's impossible to calculate GDP of that period because we don't have any such parameters. Even it's very tough to define that what exactly was the borders. What so it's almost next to impossible to go to it. But why exactly I choose to go to Angus Madison was this, that of course this data came in favor of me eventually, and at the same time that if you use a source, say Angus Madison, though I agree that the economic method is not very sound, an economist will not be ever convinced that this is exactly how the GDP would have been. But if you are using it as a source, I will certainly use this source if it shows India in a better way, or rather it is able to really show the enemy as they were and we as the greater people. I am certainly going to use it. And that's where I relied on Angus Madison drastically. And I did triangulate it with the foreign accounts, like Francois Bernier. He was a traveler who came in the period of Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar, and he talks about the economic condition of the people. While the court is full of the riches, the general condition of people is people are living under poverty, and he defines that poverty also in a lot of detail. So, and we saw that in this period is when the GDP per capita growth is shown to be negative by Angus Madison. At the same time, like if I talk about further thing, like there was a common ritual to send a lot of money to Makkah. Like in one of the campaign, or rather travel to Makkah in 1579, Akbar had sent some around 6 lakh rupees, and 6 lakh rupees in that period was a massive number, because average income of an Indian back then was around, if you are say a regular work doer, like you're a washerman or you are a chariot driver or etc etc, the income varies between 3 to 4 rupees. And this is a period when 6 lakh donation has been given to Makkah, and 1 lakh rupees has been sent to for the Sharif of Makkah as well, because Akbar is trying to pursue these guys to make him the Khalifa at the same time. And so he's looking to loot them, and the wealth of India is being taken there. And there are records which tell that whenever the wealth came from the Mughal ships or the Timurid ships, the people from the whole Muslim world would flock into Makkah that they will get some money. So everyone was behind. So you if I don't try to be politically correct, our money, our Indian money, the extorted money, and was being used and being showered over the whole Muslim world. And it was while the people were getting poorer. And so, my so much of praise to the good man Irfan Habib, that when he wrote his essays in the Cambridge Economic History of India, he has said that Akbar was one of the biggest hoarder of the money, right? He has been very, in fact, he has been very honest about the economic policies of the Timurids in his book, which was edited by Tapan Rai Chaudhary and himself. So we have seen instances which justify that yes, economic GDP per capita was certainly declining, and we were certainly not great shape. And in fact, this guy Babur himself records in Baburnama of having sent a lot of treasury to Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, etc. After he has defeated Lodi. He has taken money, and there's a amount of money which has been showered. Like numbers are massive, 23 lakhs, right? You will see the number like somewhere 30 lakhs. These are the number and the amount of money going back in 1526. So you can imagine the amount of plunder these people were doing. I can't hear you.
And it's rather ironic you use the phrase the good man for Irfan Habib, because lately we've been hearing so much about him. And in fact, this was a question from one of our participants called Amit, who had asked, was there any money being sent abroad? And my question follows from this. Should Babur be held accountable for the misdeeds of his successors? I mean, like, in a way, he set the precedents.
Yeah, absolutely. Because see, he saw himself as a person who is just third in the line of Ghazni and Gori. And if one who has placed himself in the league of these stalwarts like Ghazni and Gori, so of course you place yourself in the league of stalwarts. It depends that who your stalwart are, right? So it we are very clear. And why they were great? Because they were great in that world because they were the Butshikan, they were the idol breakers. So it goes back not only to the people who were the successors of Babur, but it also goes to the people of now who try to idolize Babur. That come on, what are you trying to idolize him for? He was a butch chicken at the end of the day. So do you still have this notion in your mind that you want to celebrate something as a something who is a bush chicken, who is an idol breaker, or you want to see him as a stalwart, or is it somewhere in your dreams too to do something like that?
Yeah, yeah. So, so there is another question by Mohit ji. He says, how much of a role did the Mughals play, or the Timur rulers play, in the economic devastation and disenfranchisement of the Indian diaspora?
So it was huge actually, because if I can quote a bit from the text itself, so which will make it very clear. Like I just said about the instance of when Babur defeated Lodi and he sent the treasury. So what he says in Baburnama is very interesting. He writes that May 12th, on Saturday, the 29th of Rajab, the examination and the distribution of the treasure were begun. To Humayun were given 70 lakhs from the treasury. And over and above this, a treasure house was bestowed on him just as it was, without ascertaining and writing down its contents. To some beygs, 10 lakhs were given, 8, 7, or 6 to others. Suitable money gifts were bestowed from the treasury on the whole army to every tribe there was, Afghan, Hazara, Arab, Baloch, etc., to each according to its position. Every trader and student, indeed, every man who had come with the army, took ample portion and share of bounteous gifts and largesse. To those not with any army went a mass of treasure and gift and largesse, as for instance 17 lakhs to Kamran, 15 lakhs to Muhammad Zaman Mirza, while to Askari Hindal and indeed to the whole various train of relations and younger children went masses of red and white, that is gold and silver, of plenishing jewels and slaves. Many gifts went to the beygs and soldiery on the side of Tramuntana. Valuable gifts were sent for the various relationships in Samarkand, Khurasan, Kashgar, and Iraq. To holy men belonging to the Samarkand and Khurasan went offerings vote to God. So to Makkah and Medina we gave one sharuki, that is one silver coin, for each and every soul in country of Kabul and the valley side of Varsak, man and woman bond and free for age or non-age. So Babar gave one silver coin to each and every citizen of Kabul. That was the minimum. Like you have not done anything, but still you are getting it. So this is the start of it, and it goes on and on, right? Like for example, when one of his person, his name is Khwaja Kalan, he decided that he doesn't wants to live in Hindustan because he's not liking Hindustan, and he tries to lure him, and he says that I bestowed on him Ghazni, Girdiz, and Sultan Masudizi Harjara, gave also the Hindustan Parganas of Guram worth 3 or 4 lakhs. It was settled for Khwaja Miri Miran also to go to Kabul. The gifts were put into his immediate charge under the custody of Mullah Hassan the banker and Tuka Hindu. So they are talking about 3 and 4 lakhs. Even in the time of now, if I tell somebody that, you please arrange 3 to 4 lakhs of rupees, right? Still it's not something that you will immediately transfer it to somebody. I'm just trying to set a perspective right there, that what it means. Still, when you make your first bank transaction to somebody, it's 50,000 rupees, and here people are talking about 30 lakhs, people are talking about 25 lakhs, 3 4 lakhs are just very usual and common. That's how the money is being sent outside, and it is in the period of Babur. Akbar did send to Makkah, Aurangzeb did send it, Shah Jahan also did the same. So a lot of money was going outside India while people kept on becoming poorer. Aparanji, you need to unmute yourself.
A couple of questions which are kind of related from Amit and Mohit and myself. They ask, one, did the Mughal policies or the policies of Babur disrupt the agrarian and the agrarian economy and the barter system? Number two, did they ever care for the common men, not just economically in the economics terms, but even otherwise? And what was their relationship with, what was Babur's relationship with his courtiers, Indian or Hindu courtiers?
So Babur didn't have much of Hindu courtiers to start with, and of course the Hindu courtiers came into the thing with Akbar being quite influential, and of course Humayun's reign was not very consequential. So, but Babur surely didn't like Hindus in great of a light, and most of the times people make Babur a secular king using one fake will which appeared in 18th century. So there's a 18th century text which talks about a will being given to Humayun because Humayun is going to become the sovereign, and it says that Humayun must respect the Hindus because it's only by their support by which we can rule, and they are the people, original people of here, etc., etc., blah blah blah. And he talks about that the cow needs to be kept safe because Hindus worship them, and this is a text of 18th century, and this is what Ram Punya and the likes of them used to make a secular king out of Babur. But the first, so there's a lot of loopholes. Like as a historian, you pick the loopholes in the thing too. That if a narrative comes first, we don't have a text of 16th century. Neither it appears in Humayunama nor it appears in Baburnama. Baburnama, of course, we can get discounted because this is being written by Babur, so maybe that while he's on the deathbed or something, so he won't have written something. But at least it should have been captured in Humayunama. It's nowhere there. Now, the Persian which is used in this text is entirely different from the Persian which was used in that very will, which is in front of us. Then suddenly, if you have got a text of 18th century, you should have a text of 17th of 16th century to justify. You cannot just say that today I say that this is 2024 and I just write a book, and it just gets buried somewhere or something. It lies with you, and Suddenly after 50 years somebody discovered that, and I have written something about Mahatma Gandhi per se. So someone may say that this is what Gandhi wanted to say, because there was one person who used to write on history, he has written something like that. This is exactly the case for this will. This is written by somebody who was known to be writing around history, and these are his words, and he's said to be saying that this is what the will is about. But there was no such thing which happened, and Humayun was not even sovereign at that period, right? If one knows about the history, Humayun was not sovereign, so the will declares the Humayun to be sovereign. So there's a lot of loopholes in it. So many people, in fact, even the scholar of his caliber like Kishore Kunal felt trapped to this, because he got wrote a very interesting book called Ayodhya Revisited, which is a very good work in terms of the case of the Ram Janmabhoomi and what the history of Ram Janmabhoomi is. But he somehow has also got fallen this trap of making Babur some very great king, or a role model of secularism, and he has also used this source, right? So that has been the thing. And as far as the destruction of our existing economic system, etc., are concerned, Babur certainly had began to do it, because and but at the same time, that was a period when we already had these ideas of the currencies, etc., which has already floated into the Indian civilization. We were already dealing with the currencies. The coins were very much there. And again, a lot of people think the rupiah was given by the Mughals, right? Or Shesha Suri, they make a claim. But actually, even the rupiah was something which was first used in the Mauryan era. And we already had the coin, and we always had the system of the coins from very long period. And the barter system existed, but was not in the mainstream economy for sure, as per the data and the details what we have. So even if he brought in a new currency or something, it didn't destroy it as such. But of course, he plundered and he extorted a lot of money. They used to hoard a lot of money, they used to extort, and they forced people to do a lot of forced production, which has been captured by the good man Irfan Habib too in his book.
Now that you mention Ayodhya, that brings me to my question. In your book, you take a stance neither for nor for against the Babari structure. You say you mention in an interview that Babari was actually a man that he had picked up from some bazaar and his male love interest, and that this structure was not intended to be a masjid at all. I would like you to clarify your position.
Yeah, so I'm gonna deal with a lot of details and nuances in the sequel about the Ayodhya for sure, but I will certainly yet address this question, that because the term Babri has come across, and again by this I will roll back the question to other people too who try to make an idol out of Bible. So we see Babri appearing in two different situations in Baburnama. One as his script, what he has created. So again, for all the bads what Babar had, Babar was a brilliant man too. He did some good poetry and did some. He created a script as well. So he was not that kind of unpad like Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar. So this is where he created the script. That's he called it Babri. And before that, during his first marriage, that is around 1500 CE, where he's married to Aisha Sultan Begum Sultan, who happens to be daughter of his own uncle Ahmad Mirza. So that's where he gets married, and he says in Baburnama that I am least interested to go and be around with Aisha Sultan Begum. And initially I used to go to her twice a month, right? Or maybe in 2 weeks I will visit once, something like that. But of late I have stopped going to her because I'm least interested being with her. I am very unattracted towards her. And while I have found a love in a man called Babri, and I'm maddened in the love of this chap, whom I found in the Camp Bazaar. And this guy Babri comes to my court. Often I call him, and if at all people see that my eyes are meeting with him, I'm so shy that I just turn my eyes away. So he's talking all these things in the context of explaining his first nikah. So when he's explaining his first nikah, while he's building a case that he's unattracted to his wife, And then he says that I'm maddened in the love of this guy Babri. So it brings to me a very straightforward conclusion that either in that period he was homosexual or he was bisexual for sure. Now, and this is not something a manufactured thing, because once upon a time when these messages would float into the WhatsApp, I would think that this is some another rubbish WhatsApp gyan. But when I found them in the Persian manuscript of Baburnama, I got a shock of my life too, because I couldn't believe, given that the people of Afghanistan, the people of Pakistan, and many likewise around do see Babar as a role model, right? Now, why do you see Babar as a role model? Now, he is a bisexual person or homosexual person, and he's an alcoholic too. And so these are the two kufr in Islam, right? And so had is if one is found to be having either of these trait, or say forget being alcoholic, if you consider the first trait of being bisexual or homosexual, you are supposed to be thrown from the terrace. That's how you're gonna be killed. You will get a death sentence as per the Islamic law. And all those people who idolize Babur will agree to what I'm saying, that this is what those guys are supposed to be getting back, right? Then other thing what Babur does is he himself idolizes stalwarts like Ghazni and Gori, so who are Butchikans. He wants to fulfill the dream of Timur, which is to Islamize whole of the world. So, so the question goes back to the people that you will idolize any man going against every tenet of Islam, but you will just accept him as hero just because he had some very nasty things for the Hindus. So does it mean that all the kufr maaf ho jayega, all the kufr are gonna be forgiven only if you become a ghazi or you pick a battle to be a jihadi, especially against the kafir Hindus, and you take up the mission of the Ghazwa-e Hind? So the question is really stacking deep into their eyes, that can they make their position ever clear? So ideally, he should never be their idol, right? So it speaks more of the hypocrisy. And certainly, I'm not very sure about the Babri Masjid thing, because I'm still figuring out, looking at the original inscription which talks about the Mir Baki Tashkandi, because Baburnama doesn't talk of it. So there are multiple views around it. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna bring all these sources in the sequel, say that what each and every sources talk about, and I will apply my own method of triangulation, that what exactly it would have happened when this temple would have been, because temple of course was destroyed, but there's no doubt about it. There was a Vishnu or Hari Mandir or Sri Ram Mandir which was destroyed, but when it happened, how it happened, I'm trying to uncover it, and I will bring this into a light with a lot of nuances with the primary sources into the sequel.
So another related question: you do talk about communist or Marxist historians who take a very pro-Muslim or pro-Mughal stance in many of their writings. But like if I quote Sudhanshu Mishra ji, he says there is not a single Muslim country where communism is not banned, and not a single communist country where a mosque has not been destroyed. Would you like to remark on this?
Yeah, for sure. And we celebrated the World Women's Day, and interestingly, World Women's Day is related to all these things, because it was in 1925 in USSR, that is in the land of Babur, Andijan, right? That's where the communists burned the veil, they banned the veil, and today the communists stand for the veil, and they want the veil to come back, right? So the and this is so interesting that recently in Jaipur Literature Festival, the other Irfan Habib, not the one who did the forgery of the Vishnu Hari inscription, or the good man whom I was talking about, the other Irfan Habib, he is in a panel, and some other historian is saying that even Nehru was a Hindu nationalist, and that's where he ignored Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, and that's why his correspondences were also seen through by Nehru. And that's where Irfan Habib intervenes and said that what rubbish you are talking, because Maulana Abdul Kalam was an illiterate. So how could he write his correspondences? So now we are gonna be living in the time and the era when it's Audrey Truskian era of the distortion, It's nowhere close to what Romila Thapar did, or Irfan Habib did, or Muhammad Habib did. They have taken it to absolutely new level. It might so happen that in next 50 years or so, it may appear that Irfan Habib is pro RSS kind of literature, because the amount of, because it's always relative, the amount of filth or amount of the distortion which these people are bringing in a very a postmodernist way, where they are just being very nihilistic that this absolutely is rubbish. This is how the narrative is. Like Audrey Tuske proudly says that Gupta Empire has nothing to do with India. They contributed nothing for them. So when these kind of bizarre literatures are appearing, which is absolute pseudo historiography, that's when these guys will start looking sane to you. That of course Romila Thapar did here and there of the sources and lied by riding on the shoulders of stalwarts and said that Somnath was destroyed because Ghazni thought that it was the sculpture of Al Manat which was brought in from Arabia. So in that delusion he broke it. He had nothing for the Hindus. She will do all these kind of notorious activities, but she never went to, they never went to these kind of levels at which these postmodernist historians are coming to. And that's a very interesting remark, that of course the communists hated the Muslims and Muslims hated the communists, but they all commonly hated the Hindus, because Marx was very clear that his enemy was the British crown, isn't it, the capitalist. But he says that British are doing some fabulous job by enslaving Indians, because Indians are the Asians are to be taken out from the Asiatic backwardness. So he supported the colonialism. So they will follow their father, they will follow their prophet, isn't it? So if the prophet himself is saying it, that whatsoever may happen, you have to stand against the Hindus, or you have to stand against the Indian philosophy or the Indian ideas. So they will even shake hand with the who are their immediate enemies.
Well, this is very interesting, what you just revealed about Marx, that he said that in Hindus need to be brought out of their backwardness. I would like
Yes.
you to elaborate this about what did Marx say exactly about the Hindus or the Indians?
Yeah, I just I put it in my book. I'll just read it out, and I had deliberately put it in the introductory part because I wanted to make the case that the Marx is one whom you so much venerate, but he's a guy. He says that England, it is true, in causing a social revolution in Hindustan, was acquitted only by the vilest interest and was stupid in her manner of enforcing them. But that is not the question. The question is, can mankind fulfill its destiny without a fundamental revolution in social state of Asia? If not, whatever may have been the crimes of England, she was unconscious tool of history in bringing about the revolution. England has to fulfill a double mission in India, one destructive and the other regenerating, the annihilation of the old Asiatic society and laying the material foundation of Western society in Asia. When a great social revolution shall have mastered the results of the barbarous epoch and subjected them to the common control of the most advanced peoples, then only will human progress cease to resemble the hideous pagan idol who would not drink the nectar but from the skulls of the slain. So he's talking about Asiatic backwardness. He's talking about the pagan idols, as in the Hindus. He's talking about the tantric rituals of the blood from the skulls, etc. So he has in fact at places mocked Hanuman, calling him monkey god, etc. So Marx had terrific contempt against the Hindus, even if he may be not knowing even ABCZ about the Hindus, but he had a preset mindset about us. And Marxists are certainly following the path, and there is no indifferent. And just going a bit back into the history, didn't the communists change their stance that once they were against the British, but suddenly they became the pro-British and so on and on because of the how the
Hmm.
alliance changed between Stalin and the British?
Right.
So they just follow their father who sits somewhere else, and that has been the problem all throughout.
Yeah. So, so the next question again from Amit: how did the Indians, the Hindus, kind of deal with such a with such a ruler who had so much of hatred against them? And a related question from me: Do you think that Babur sowed the seeds of the division between the two communities in all over India, which continues till today, and in fact now it is all over Southeast Asia, you may say?
So first picking the second part of the question, that I don't see that is a very recent phenomenon. When I say recent, because if we take an example of Babur or the Timurid, so it's just 500 years ago. But the communication with Islam goes back to 1400 years. So that's why I use the term in recent time. So I don't see it as a recent phenomenon, but it's a very old phenomenon, because I see the world history itself as the struggle between the idol makers or idol worshippers and the idol breakers. That has how, whether it was the between the pagan world and the Christian world, one can refer to the work of book called The Darkening Age, where it explains that how the pagan civilization was wiped out by the Christian forces. And so that was also the battle between the idol makers and the idol breakers. What we saw in India, right from the period of Ghazni to Gori to everybody, what they wanted to do, they wanted to break the idols. They wanted to humiliate us, so as to that Aurangzeb even went further to the extent that he left Kashi Mandir be destroyed, half of it, so that humiliation can look into our eyes and we feel humiliated each and every day. So there was always this thing that who is a Muslim and who is a Hindu or who is a pagan. There was no such thing called amenity between the community. It never existed. I may sound politically incorrect, but this has been the reality, because when Rana Sanga got into the battle also against Babur in Battle of Khanwa, he knew that he is fighting foreign forces, and they evoked the emotion of hailing their god, while in this side Babur this evoked jihad. So why specifically Babur evoked jihad only while fighting Rana Sanga? It's not that he was making the Tower of Heads for the first time during this battle. He had made the the Tower of Heads, even of the Muslims, when he was in Afghanistan, but he didn't evoke jihad there. He didn't do it. He do it especially when he came to Hindustan. It's not that Khilji had no thought about it. There's a very interesting exchange between Khilji and one of the ulema, where it said that you are supposed to rule the Hindus because Islam needs to be spread. So the whole idea of spreading Islam was always in the doctrine. It was always in the book. And there was, yeah, of course, there was certain sense of contempt for the Muslims who are recent converts or who were the Indian Muslims. It was always there. They always preferred a foreigner over any Indian Muslim. They would prefer to have a Persian or the Farsi. They would prefer to have a Turani in the court, but not the. In fact, the composition of the court of the Shah Jahan, Jahangir, or Aurangzeb, in fact, was full of these people. It was not that they were any pro to Indian Muslims as well. But of course, in the list of the hierarchy, it was clear that you have to Islamize, you have to establish Darul Islam, and you have to host the flag of Islam in this land of Bharat. And the what was the first part of question? It was about how did we deal with it. So we
How
couldn't
did the
deal.
Hindus? How did the Hindus deal with it? And one more thing, like you said that even before Babur, but before Babur, there was how many Muslims were there over here? Because the marauders who came before him were more interested in just looting and going back rather than
No,
converting people over here.
no, but Khaljis are the slave dynasty did exist. Mamluk did exist. They established their empire and Delhi Sultanate, and that was his target too. That he has to come. And why he knew about the Delhi Sultanate? Because this is what was spoken about. This was always the thing, that Delhi is the thing, and the Sultanate has been ruling there from 13th century onwards, and it goes on and on. So it was for the past 2 centuries, still before Babur came. The Muslim rule had been there. Of course, the conversions did happen, and there was also certain differences of school of thoughts too. There's a Hanafi school and there's a Safi school. In the Safi school, you are just supposed to kill the kill the Hindus or the Kafirs. You're not supposed to collect the jizya. But Babur coming from Naqshbandi school, because he also followed the Sufi tradition, and almost all these marauders were following some or the other Sufis, and they believed in collecting the jizya. So they had different sort of model, because they thought that it will also give you benefit, and if you convert, then certainly the benefits is not gonna come. So it's a very different topic altogether, that which ruler was really going for collecting jizya, for what reason. Of course, economy was one reason. The more jizya you collect, the more money or the value you add to your sultanate, right? And at the same time, we were fighting quite well with them, because Rana Sanga did give a very strong fight against Babur. And in fact, we talk about the Battle of Khanwa, but we forget about the earlier battle just before it, which he had fought, his army had fought, and they were defeated. And as I mentioned earlier, such was the fear of the Rajput kings that the soldiers who went to that battle refused to go into the next battle, that is the Battle of Khanwa, because they were always getting. Babar says that the dreams of those Rajput warriors are coming in to these soldiers, so they are denying to go in the Battle of Khanwa. So we try to deal with them quite actively, but we always had something which never worked our right way, and they were not too successful as well, because this empire was not as big as somehow people want to put it on Twitter and social media with a green map all over. It was just a very small time case where there were also tributaries and subsidiaries of the empire, and in fact, Aurangzeb, whose reign they showed to be the largest one, he was a man responsible for the massive decline too, because he was badly concentrated to capture Deccan, because he could never accept how Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj could get away from his captivity, and it was always back of his mind that he has to defeat the Marathas, he has to capture the Deccan or Dakshan, and he spent almost 2.5 decade of his life, and he died just and in fact he was defeated by Tarabai, which also gave a lot of wounds to Aurangzeb, that how can I be defeated by a Maratha female. And so they were there are a lot of nuances. Maps are certainly not as they were not as successful as they are shown to be. They were just a lot more inconsequential. It was NCRT books were a bit too generous to show them as they were much more larger than even the Mauryan Empire.
And now that you do mention NCRT books, two more questions. One, why don't they ever talk about the Ahom rulers who had the most successful and the long-lasting resistance against the Mughals? And there's another question. Just a minute. Yeah, was it Prithviraj Chauhan's blunder in forgiving repeated invaders? And did this blunder play a role in the rapid conquest of the Indian peninsula later?
So, in retrospection, we can come up with a lot of multiple theories. But I have a very strong belief, and I do propagate it on social media as well, that at times I will see that a certain Rajput group fighting with certain Maratha group fighting with certain Rajput group, and this and that. These all happening. Everyone trying to celebrate the hero of their region or caste or community. But I always see that, and that's the reason why actually I don't retrospect as well. I always feel that whoever the warrior was, whoever the king was, whoever my ancestor was, did a lot enough that still I am Abhash Maldiyar, and I didn't become something else, and I still wear the kalawa, I still is there, I wear the tilak. It's for the sacrifice they did, the ferocious battle they fought, that what was so great that other civilizations just got wiped up so easily in say 1.5 decade, 2 decades. They got Islamized, and what was there with us that we are still strong, it's holding so strong that I know that the census has not come up, but still, I'm sure that the Hindus are around 71%, 72% people, right? So we are still stronging the fort. Of course, one may try to further categorize into Hindus into the woke Hindus, the communist Hindus, etc., etc. So, but whatsoever it may be, the Islamization has not been able to penetrate that much into the Hindus, and we have still hold the fort for very long. And with this era coming in where the people have taken up this to put across the history as it is, put across the theories of the religions as it is, whether it may be in form of the books, or it may be in forms of the podcast, or it may be in forms of very piercing articles, journals, etc. So it's looking upon them, and that's the reason why we even brought our foundation called Foundation for Indian Culture and FIHCR, Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research, which me and Vikram Sampath began. And the whole idea was that we want to go back to the original sources and go back to the people who know the language. And our first project itself is about history of Buddhism. That's the pilot project for us, where we will be dealing with 5 books in the series, and where we will deal specifically with exactly what was the relation between the Hindus and the Buddhists. That the destruction happened as it is claimed, though I stand against it, but still I am open to explore into the primary sources through the lens of the people who know the language, going back to the Pali text, going back to the Tibetan text. And so the when these are the things which are going to happen, I'm sure that today we are 72%, but these ideas, which if they walk the way they are walking for next 10 years or 20 years or 3 decades, things are going to change very rapidly. Through historiography, we will not only create the sense of affinity for the culture, but we will also create an affinity for our religious identity. We will be able to embolden people to believe that what it means to be Hindu, you have gone through a much, that ancestors have bled enough that we still have a name which is Hindu, and we still wear a tilak, and we still celebrate Holi and Deepavali.
Wonderful talk. I will bring this to an end right now. Uh, a remark by Amit. He says, so finally, writing books has proven to be a better choice than spending time against the Twitter trolls. Thank you so much, Abhasji. There are a few more questions which we can bring in the subsequent. And another request by the same participant. He says that it's a request that you also publish the book, simultaneously publish the book in Hindi when you launch this one. So
We'll definitely
that's it.
revert to the publisher.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Abhasji. Looking forward to your further contribution.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.